Hello everyone, welcome to the spoiler talk for Cloak Dagger Season 2. Really excited to get into this one. That first season was really good and I can't wait to get into this one. Also, it hasn't really been that long. I like how both of these seasons take place in the same year. Makes me very happy. Can do them close together as well. So then, in this episode, it seems that after the end of Season 1, Tandy and Tyrone, well, Tandy mainly, has gone back to her old life. She's patched things up with her mummy. And also she went back to dancing. Meanwhile, Tyrone is doing something completely different. He is going after crime, stealing their stuff, and bringing it to O'Reilly, who is not really happy that Tyrone keeps doing this. This is just not a good thing, because that also will cause crime people to retaliate, because they can't necessarily make arrests on this. They gotta have proof, so there's a bit of a problem there. Also, Tandy and her mom are in a support group for abuse victims, and in that support group, Tandy overhears a girl who doesn't say anything, but you can see that she's being abused by her boyfriend, and Tandy takes a very good interest in that one. But before anything else can happen, it's movie night, baby, between Tandy and Tyrone. And they watch actually a movie from my past as well. I used to watch this a lot, actually. Zorro it is. And actually, here's a little bit of a story before I continue on with Cloak and Dagger, obviously. Back in my childhood, we had like a costume party or whatever. I actually do remember this. And I actually went dressed as Zorro. I had like a cape, I had the mask, I had the hat. It was also probably the cheapest costume that they had, but still I went as Zorro. I even had one of those like flimsy floppy like blade thingies. I don't actually know what it, like a sword. I think it was actually a sword. I don't know why I said blade thingies, but I'm gonna keep it in because it sounds funny. But yeah, basically a flimsy sword as well. And also, this is just a funny little thing for me personally. When I did my signature for my ID, obviously you gotta do a signature, I actually ended it with like a Zorro thing. I can't really replicate it now because everything needs to be done with finger and machine. It's like, it's very difficult to get the Z out, but that is actually what I did as a child. Anyway, back to it. They have a nice little movie night, and then afterwards, Tandy follows the girl that was at the abuse meeting, and she sees that the girl is about to be abused, but then gets kicked out by her boyfriend. So Tandy goes in while the boyfriend is taking a power nap, and she just scratches all over his house and then leaves. However, that didn't really work because at the next meeting, that actually caused the boyfriend to be able to use this as leverage over the girlfriend. Because after he saw that, he decided to take a chainsaw to the walls, like 3 days grace. And then his girl came by and saw him, and he pretended to be sad about it. So now he has an even tighter grip on her, which is something that Tandy was not entirely expecting. Also, Tyrone goes to another place in order to steal from the baddies. However, he gets caught and saved by Tandy because of the fact that she went back to his place and found the map and then followed him over there. However, when they get back, initially Tandy's like, look man, if you needed help, I would have helped you. You could have just said something. I would have helped you. And I'm like, yeah, that's what we call a team. But then also an argument erupts between the two, obviously, so Tandy leaves angrily. So then Tyrone brings the stuff that he took to O'Reilly with a note saying, I'm sorry. Also, O'Reilly is looking really good for that girl, so that's fun. But also Tyrone overhears the fact that there's apparently gonna be a meeting of the baddie bosses. So Tyrone later on goes over to Tandy and says, I'm sorry, thank you for helping me, and also will you help me again? And Tandy's like, okay, so we gotta go to a club because that's where the meeting goes. First we gotta style our outfits apparently, and we go over there and Tandy calls a little distraction. Tyrone goes in, plants the listening device. I actually have one of those devices. I have no idea how it works. I was actually planning on using that for my Transformers reviews, but I never really could figure out how it worked, and I don't know, never really went back to it. Maybe one day. But he plants the listening device, teleports out, and now we wait. However, later on, as the meeting is about to begin, all the baddies are here. There's just blood on the window. Someone gets thrown against the window, and when Tandy and Tyrone shows up, it looks like a mayhem went through here. Alright, so before we get into episode 2, I have a little bit of an announcement to make, a kind of an announcement. My sister just sent me a message. By the way, this is being recorded in June of 2025. Anyway, about the fact that she wants to see Five Nights at Freddy's 2. I have not seen the first one, nor have I seen the second one, nor had I any interest to go to the second one. However, who passes up a free movie? Come on, dude. I told her you're gonna pay because when we went to Fantastic Four and Superman, I paid. So she's gonna pay when she chooses a movie. Okay? So she said, sure. So I'm going to that movie. Comes out in December, or came out in December. Look, man, like I said, June of 2025. And that means I have to do a review of both of those movies on this channel, which means I have to adjust the uploading schedule. And if I do adjust it, it doesn't seem like this review is coming out on the 1st of January of 2026. So I guess best I think I could say is a Happy New Year, boys. I guess if the planning still works. So it's a maybe Happy New Year, but still Happy New Year. Hope 2026 is gonna be fantastic for you guys. All right, now then, back to Cloak and Dagger. So everyone's dead in the room, and O'Reilly is not happy about anything that has happened here. And Tyrone also sees a weird logo, which is gonna help him with his storyline. But O'Reilly kicks them out, and I guess then we'll leave her for later, because of the fact that we focus on different characters here until we get the full story at the end. So Tyrone, he goes over to Evita's aunt in order to be able to get information about the logo. And basically that symbol is a symbol for death, in a way, the god of death or whatever it was. And it's also a Veve, apparently it was called. Look, I do not know anything about this stuff, so I'm basically just nodding my head and hope for the best. But while he's there, Evita also walks in, is angry at Tyrone, walks away. Tyrone follows her, and she's like, you haven't spoken to me in 8 months. By the way, first season takes place in February of 2017, which means we are in October, boys, of 2017. However, after that, he shows her his powers. Like, that's supposed to make it good, but this makes it even worse, because, like, you can just teleport to her and tell her you're fine. Now you look like an even bigger prick. Come on, dude. So Tyrone goes back to the church, makes a Veve, and then automatically teleports to Michaela, the girl from the abuse session, and she's being held captive in an ambulance. However, Tyrone then gets discovered, and he tries to teleport her out of there as well. However, yeah, that doesn't really work. He only teleports himself, so that's a bit of a failure. Meanwhile, let's see what Tandy has been up to, because after O'Reilly kicked her out, she went back to the abuses meeting, and Michaela once again talked about the positive things about her boyfriend, and Tandy then gets mad at her, which causes her to storm off, and Tandy then goes in search of her, goes to the boyfriend's place, and then he's like, if she comes back here, she's gonna be punched again. And it's like, okay, cool, yeah, just admit that. You're a great guy, aren't you? And then Tandy is like, oh yeah, you were such a brave guy for fighting off all those robbers while you were drooling with 6 beers, because I was the one who scratched up your house. I like that. But Michaela's not there either, so she goes and dances, gets really upset. However, while she's dancing, she's causing a power outage, which will happen throughout this episode with her powers. She has light powers, I guess, like actual like light powers instead of just light daggers. So then the next day, she goes back to the meeting in order to see if Michaela is there, but she's not there. But she meets a man over there named Deshane, and he is going to become very important later on in this season. So they have a little bit of a talk. Tandy sees like a vision of her dad, causes another power surge, and then she runs away. So what's O'Reilly been up to? Well, after she kicked out the 2 of them, she made an anonymous call to the cops, and afterwards she went over to the bar, got stupidly drunk, walked outside, and then saw another version of herself in a puddle of water, aka, yes, O'Reilly has split personality. So the way that it looks, the new personality takes over. She goes back to the crime scene, and she's basically, oh, this is what happened, and this is what happened, and this is what happened. And afterwards she learns about the wife, so she goes over there and then breaks something in order to get information out of her, which she does, apparently something about ambulances. So she goes to investigate and gets to the location that she needs to go. However, there she finds Tandy, who, after causing the power outage, saw a bunch of women standing next to a pole with a bunch of people on it, and then Deshane explained that situation about human trafficking and all that terrible stuff. And afterwards he gets a call saying that Michaela has been found and she's at the hospital because she overdosed. So Tandy goes to the hospital, and then she touches Michaela. However, normally she sees the positive stuff, but this time she does not. She sees a door, basically an ambulance door, and she also sees where she needs to go. So she goes over to that location and finds O'Reilly there. So O'Reilly and Tandy, they go inside and they find a guy. Tandy's like, that's him. So they chase him down. Well, Tandy chases him down while O'Reilly blocks his path. Simple thing. However, then he tries to run Tandy over, and Tandy basically just charges up a big bang attack and fires it, because apparently she can just do that too. I didn't know she could do that. Where did this come from? How did you know that you were able to do that? I mean, yeah, yes, it's been 8 months, but still, it's like, I didn't know you could do that. You're called Dagger. You're not called Big Bang Attack. But afterwards, O'Reilly questions the guy, and then when Tandy is gone, she kills him. Meanwhile, Tyrone, after seeing the woman in the ambulance, he tried to make more Veves in order to get teleported back there to save her. And Evita comes and apologizes, and now everything is good between the two. And she tries to help him because of the fact that he also wants to learn how to teleport a person with him, as you know, he does in the comic books and shows and all that stuff. So she makes another Veve, and Tyrone teleports her with him to the hospital, so now he can do it. And there he sees that she's overdosed. So after that, he goes over to O'Reilly's and he knocks on the door. However, someone seems to be a bit tied up in there, so Tyrone tries to open the door. It doesn't work. However, this is teleport man, so he can teleport inside, and we see an O'Reilly tied up. And so Tyrone frees her and is like, who did this to you? And she's like, me, I did that. So then Tyrone teleports her to Tandy, who she also said is in danger. You, Tandy, and me, we're all three of us are in danger. So that's why he teleported over to Tandy, who's like, wait a minute, I just left you with the other guy. How are you here? What is happening? So they go over to the other O'Reilly, and who is still there, and killed the guy. And now we have two O'Reillys. My goodness, mayhem never stops. So, episode 3 starts off with Mina doing some experiments on mice, and then the power outage happens, which causes one of the mice to split in two, and then the second one to kill the first one, which doesn't really spell a lot of good stuff for O'Reilly. And then the rest of this episode is kind of split in two. What happened to O'Reilly, or Mayhem as she's called, and present day. So we're just first gonna go into the past stuff. So basically, 242 days ago, Mayhem emerged from the lake. The one that we saw at the end of season 1 was not in fact O'Reilly, it was in fact Mayhem. And she walks off and learns that O'Reilly was actually found and rushed to the hospital. So she goes to the hospital, finds O'Reilly, tries to kill her, but she can't because there's people coming, and then escapes. Afterwards, she then tries and makes it her life mission in order to find Connors. And she got an apartment at a very shady place. So Mayhem goes over to Francis, the father, in order to find Tyrone because he is linked to Connors. But Francis doesn't know where he is after everything that had happened. And also, it seems like he has lost the appetite to care at all. So then later on, she used the police computer. And there's a guy who talks to her. And then she's like, get me a drink. So then when she's done with the police computer, she leaves. And then O'Reilly comes in and he gives her the drink. I actually thought that was pretty funny. She just gets back to work. She's like, free drink, hey, why not? So then eventually, Mayhem finds Bradford, who was the partner of Connors when Billy was shot. However, the deal was that Bradford would cover for Connors, and then Connors would cover for Bradford later on. That later on never happened, so that's a bit of a shame. So then Mayhem kills him, and then after visiting Francis once again, she finds a flyer of the missing girls, and basically after that, we have everything that we need to know up until present day, outside of the fact that there was no split personality thing happening in the episode where we first got introduced to Mayhem. She was actually standing there next to her, so it wasn't just like a vision in the puddle. It was actually her reflection. So then in present day, Mayhem tries to shoot the gang, but Tyrone teleports us out. And then later on, we go over to Mina in order to get some answers because she's probably the only one who has some answers. But she basically explains that O'Reilly kind of split in two, but so did her emotions, and all of the, I guess, bad emotions went into Mayhem. So Mayhem is not really a good one, and that no matter what, at the end of the day, when all is said and done, Mayhem will always try to kill O'Reilly and be the only O'Reilly left. So then Tandy is like, alright O'Reilly, where would you go? Let's follow your path. So they do that. They go to the shady apartment and see the wall of people that they're going after, and also a suitcase full of guns, and I'm like, Punisher. So then O'Reilly finds a bunch of cards and she lays them out in a certain order, and that shows basically the walking order. So it seems like the next step is Spear 81, but then on the news, Spear 81 is on fire, so dang it, we were too late. So then the next one would be the strip club, apparently. So we head over to the strip club, but O'Reilly will wait outside while Tyrone and Tandy go inside. However, they're no match for Mayhem, who takes care of Tandy with the greatest of ease, and then leaves outside, and then is like, alright, O'Reilly, come on, shoot me, I know you can't, and then walks off. And apparently she attacked an ambulance and saved a couple of girls, and then Tandy is like, well, maybe Mayhem is not such a bad thing, and I'm like, well, would you say the same thing about Punisher? Like, would you say that Punisher is also, like, a good person? Because while he does some good, I wouldn't really call him an actual hero, you know? However, when Tandy then touches the girls, she sees that the girls have no more hope, which could be a cause of what happened to the girls, or it's because of the fact of what Mayhem did. So then Tyrone touches the girls and sees the location where they were being held. So that's the next place where we go. So Tyrone and Tandy head over there while O'Reilly waits back at the ambulance because that's where the teleportation will be happening. So then Tyrone goes in, looks around, and comes back and is like, alright, about 5 guys in there. I think there were actually more than 5 guys, but he saw 5 guys. So then Tyrone has the plan. He's gonna go in there, save the girls, get them out, because if Mayhem does show up, or if we get caught, there could be a shootout and innocent people could be in the crossfire. So Tyrone goes in there, he gets all of the girls out while Tandy causes a distraction with her like light ball with Big Bang attack. However, as Tyrone is doing that, Tandy gets found. However, then a truck appears and just smashes the dude. So Tandy is saved, but Tandy wasn't necessarily safe because Tandy still had to jump out of the way in order to not be crushed by the truck. And then Tandy's like, you don't have to do anything, we got the girls out. And Mayhem is like, alright, fantastic, grabs a gun, is like, alright, I'm going in. Gets in there, starts shooting. Also, Tyrone sees the fact that there's a kid in there as well who is working with the baddies, and Mayhem starts unloading on everyone, including the kid. So Tyrone jumps in front of the kid, and with his powers he's able to just, I don't know, make the bullets go someplace else, I don't know. And then afterwards he absorbs Mayhem, which, okay, still would like to know how that whole thing works, but whatever. And then to end the episode, we see what Mayhem sees, and that is the fact that she's at a Roxxon gas station. She sees the fridge with her dead boyfriend inside. He wakes up and he's like, how about some pancakes? So Tyrone tells Tandy finally what he did to Connors. I thought this conversation may have already happened, but I guess it did not. And then we get a little bit of an argument about it, but then Tandy's like, okay, I want to be inside of you. Not like that. Well, maybe, you know, I don't know how much she likes pegging, but still, not like that. And Tyrone doesn't really know how to open up the portal that he can do, which goes into the dark dimension. He doesn't know how that whole thing works. It just happens when he's completely terrified, like with Connors, like with Mayhem. So Tandy's like, if I need to make you afraid, then I'll make you afraid. Starts chucking daggers his way, but he doesn't get scared because he knows exactly who Tandy is. But then Tandy starts talking about why wouldn't he let Connors out, and then Tyrone is like, yeah, because I'm afraid, okay? I never even tried to get him out because I'm afraid that if he gets out, what he'll do to my family. And that is enough fear in order to open up a portal, so she jumps inside. Also, the bad guys at the police station, they see a poster hanging there, a wanted poster of Tyrone, and are like, he's the guy. So they instantly tell their boys, after they get that one phone call, that Tyrone Johnson is the bad guy that they have been chasing, or at least the good guy, technically, that they've been chasing. And then O'Reilly calls him after Tandy goes inside of him that, hey, the bad guys know about you. So Tyrone heads over to his mom's in order to save her, and Tandy meets a younger version of Tyrone. However, this is actually just in a sense, the ruler of, I guess, of the dark dimension, and he takes whatever form needs to happen. For Mayhem, he took the form of the dead boyfriend, and for Tandy, he takes the form of younger Tyrone, but his name is Papa Legba, or whatever, but we're just gonna call him Papa because that is also what Tandy calls him. And she asks for some guidance about where to go, and she asks him about the fact, like, hey, have you seen Mayhem? And he's like, well, yeah, I kind of have, you know. Do you want her back? She's kind of like half a person, but do you want her back? Because if you do, you gotta come with me. And he shows her this thing where basically Tandy has to give up her power in the dark dimension, and that is the only way she will be able to save Mayhem and potentially also Connors, who's also in here. So Tandy gives up her dagger, gets a coin. The problem is it's a two-sided coin. One is dagger, but the other side is cloak. So the bad guys arrive at Tyrone's mom's place, and he wants to teleport her out. Problem is, like I said, because the fact that Tandy gave up her powers and they are the divine pairing, yeah, Tyrone can't teleport anymore. Which, that was unexpected. So now, Tyrone and his mom run away. Mom steals a car. She can do that. Sure, why not? I mean, she had a past life, but I didn't know her past life was this bad. And they escape. Eventually, they get stopped by a police blocking, but then they escape that as well, get inside of a bus. But inside of that bus, Tyrone sees the kid who he saved, and then immediately they run away again into this building that is apparently haunted. And apparently the kid followed them and called up the boys. So it's like, maybe you shouldn't shouldn't have saved that kid. So Tandy finds Mayhem pretty quickly, actually, and she's like, you need me in order to escape. So then they get in front of a bunch of mirrors, and then apparently Mayhem has no reflection, because technically I guess you could say Mayhem has no light. It's all Mayhem in that sense. But Tandy has a bunch of things, so she goes to one of them and then gets teleported to a different place where they can see that someone has actually lived here for a while and hung up a bunch of cloaks everywhere. Connors, that is. So then eventually Tandy and Mayhem make it to a record store full of names of all of the missing girls and Tandy's name as well. So Tandy grabs a couple of records and she puts them on, and apparently the records show flashbacks. However, it shows in a sense the truth of the flashbacks, and Tandy just I guess gets traumatized by the fact that her dad was indeed abusive to her mom. So that's fun, you know, you love to see it. However, the last one she then breaks, and the kid holds up his gun to Tyrone and his mom, and then Tyrone's mom is able to talk the kid down while Tyrone just grabs the gun. So get that to me, what's wrong with you? However, he did call the boys, so then Tyrone gets the phone from the kid, and then the kid goes over to the boys, I guess you could say, and tells them that the cops are on their way, and that is because of the fact that the cops are actually on their way. Because of that moment, Tyrone calls O'Reilly, who then tells the police station about it, and then they go to arrest Tyrone. Problem is, he still doesn't necessarily have the teleportation powers. However, O'Reilly is able to get Tyrone's mom out of there, so that is good. But, like I said, he has no teleportation power. Meanwhile, in the dark dimension, Mayhem finds Connors, and she instantly starts killing him by choking him. He's like, I'm sorry, and she's like, I don't care. Die. And Tandy can't really do anything to stop Mayhem outside of breaking the rules, because she grabs her dagger, which she's not allowed to do. You're not allowed to use your powers until you put the coin back in the thing. That is the rules. You gotta respect the rules. But she pulled out the dagger, and then things start to shake, and Tyrone teleports away before he can be caught by the cops. And after that, Tandy, Tyrone, and Connors are in the church, and Connors escapes. I don't know if Mayhem came with them. So now that Connors is free, the first thing he does is picks up a gun. Meanwhile, Tyrone is very mad at Tandy for freeing Connors, because apparently when Tandy was being pulled out, she grabbed Connors but couldn't grab Mayhem. So sadly enough, Mayhem is still in there, and I don't think we can really expect a return visit because of the fact that, well, she did kind of break the rules. So I don't really know if Mayhem's gonna be back this season, but probably will be. And Tandy wants to help Tyrone find Connors. However, her mom's calling her, so she has to go over there, where she gets into an argument with her mom, because her mom is kind of going back to what she was before, which is not a good thing. Meanwhile, Tyrone goes over to O'Reilly to ask her for help in order to find Connors. However, she is too scared to help him, so he's on his own, because of the fact that when he texts Tandy, she is also not responding. So then Tyrone apparently has a bunch of gun and ammo. He opens up all the bullets, and he makes one of those veves, and then he lights it up, and he's like, I want to find Connors. And Connors is actually at the pier where he shot his brother. So Tyrone appears, and Connors is like, I wanted you to help take me down. I want to help you take me down, okay? Because I want to make amends. And Tyrone doesn't believe him. Really, you know, after all these months in being in a dark place, you really expect me to believe that you suddenly have a change of heart. And he does, actually. So Tandy goes over to Deshane in order to ask him if she can question the victims, but Deshane is like, that's not gonna happen. And then she sees Deshane look at a woman named Leah, so that's the next target. So if Connors is truly sincere, Tyrone takes Connors to his dad in order to kind of get that truth out. So the dad instantly just grabs Connors like, I'ma kill him. But no, you can't do that, because the fact that Connors has an uncle, and he has a file that will be able to put Connors and his uncle in jail. And while this is happening, Tandy has a plan. She lies to Leah about her abusive boyfriend, and she's gonna pay a visit in order for Leah to trust her. So she goes to Tyrone, who is supposed to be either her pimp or her abusive boyfriend. And Tyrone doesn't like that, but it's still enough for Tandy to be able to get in with Leah. And then she gets a story from Leah about her abusive ex-boyfriend, who might be trafficking girls as well. And that is Tandy's next location. But first, let's talk about Tyrone and what he has to do, because Tyrone, he gets the blade down from Connors. Basically, there's a guy who has a key, and you need to grab that key, and there's only one moment when you can actually grab that key, and then you need to go to this place, which is men's only, and and it's all for the upper rich people. And that key leads to a bottle room, and in the bottle there's supposed to be a file. Just not sure which bottle. So Tyrone puts on some white clothing in order to blend into the place, teleports inside, gets the key, and then asks O'Reilly in order to cause a distraction so that he can go in and get the files. Which she does, because she just comes in and is like, yo, hey, bomb threat. Apparently we got a bomb threat for this location. So everyone needs to evacuate. However, when Tyrone finds the bottle's empty. So that's a bit of a shame. Also, Tandy goes to the place of the ex-boyfriend, beats everyone up there, and tries to get information out of the guy. But she doesn't really get the information that she needs, sadly enough. And then when she walks outside, she once again meets Leah, who is there as well to check up on Tandy. So Tyrone teleports Connors to the church in order to kill him because he lied. But however, then he accidentally looks into Connors thanks to his powers, and he sees that Connors is actually sincere, which I'm like, you couldn't have done this earlier, you know? But he is sincere. He truly wants to turn himself in. So then Tyrone takes Connors to the only one who can actually help in this situation, his mummy. However, Tandy, sadly enough, is not in that much luck because of the fact that Tandy gets tased by Leah as an ambulance approaches, and she gets put into that ambulance, and the ambulance drives off. So everyone who always blames only men, women can also be the problem. The first time actually I saw something like this was in like a crime show where there was this man who was into the young ones, let's just say that. However, his secretary, a woman, provided the young ones for him. So, women can be just as bad as men. Just saying. However, usually it is men, sadly enough. Also, I will say this about this episode. The ending of the episode was finally a song I recognized, even though I don't recognize this version of the song. Because I was just like sitting there, and then it was like, then I heard, in violent times, you shouldn't have to sell your soul. In black and white, they really, really ought to know. Cause shout, let it all out. And I was like, I know that song, because that's actually a band that I started listening to, that being Tears for Fears. The thing is that this is actually a cover by someone else, by Zayda Wolf? I don't know. But anyway, a cover of Shout. And I was like, oh my god, a song that I know. And this one, I instantly started singing along. I couldn't help myself. But yeah, I just wanted to make that reference, which I actually thought the version of the song was actually perfect for the ending of this episode, because that's the thing that Tandy kind of needs to do. She needs to shout. However, she needs to shout in a special way so that Tyrone can hear her. Alright, just like with Daredevil Season 3, if you hear some background booming, that is actually my neighbor being once again a prick. So I apologize. There's absolutely nothing I can do about that. I apologize. That's the best I can do. So let's get into the episode then. So the Shane is revealed to be the bad guy, and he is using the music player in order to manipulate Tandy's feelings and give her complete despair. That is at least the point of this episode. So starting off, we have her perfect world that then gets ruined by racism. Simple as that, just racism. However, then also Tandy and Tyrone have their powers. And Tyrone is a cop in this good future. But like I said, during the racism at the store, they activate their powers. The next vision is the fact that Tandy and Tyrone both worked at Roxxon, where everything goes wrong and once again powers get activated. And the third one is the fact that they're both criminals. Sandy is doing the stuff that she did back in season 1, except for the fact that she's stealing from her boyfriend from season 1, and Tyrone is stealing cars. However, by the third one, Tandy feels like she knows fully that there's something wrong here, and after that she basically has this weird thing where she goes through all of the visions, knows that something is wrong, and she also sees this mysterious figure, the Shane. However, she cannot really fight him, and he also reveals to her that he feeds off of despair. That is what his power is, basically. He was also affected by the Roxxon explosion, and he feeds off of despair in order to stop migraines from happening. So then Tandy breaks the music player, wakes up, escapes while the Shane drives away. She goes back to the church. It turns out Tyrone has been searching for her, and then they call O'Reilly for some backup in order to stop the Shane. However, the cops arrive, so Tandy and Tyrone go in on their own, and they confront the Shane. However, then the Shane shoots Tyrone. However, turns out all of this was fake, because there is one thing that Tandy has hope for, and that is through Tyrone. Tyrone gives her hope, so by taking that away, he now has a full grasp on her, and she basically surrenders to him. Not fully, but she surrenders her hope. She gives him her dagger, so that is not good. Then in episode 7, Tandy, being in a hotel room now, is 100% confident that Tyrone will find her. However, she has lost her power because the Shane has taken away her hope, even though she still hopes that Tyrone can find her. I don't really understand how this part works, because like she has no more hope, but she's still like, Tyrone will find me. It's like, but that means she still has hope, right? Like, whatever. Anyway, Tyrone and O'Reilly also are exploring the crime scene that Tandy left behind, and they notice that Tandy did it. So then Tyrone starts searching for Tandy, and also Tyrone's mom is cooking while she is interrogating Connors, who at one point tries to escape when the dad arrives, but he decides not to do it and eventually tells her where her son was buried. That's basically that whole storyline. So Tandy meets another girl, and the thing is that the way that the Shane keeps these women here is through fear, but also through taking away their hope, and that will be more revealed later on in the episode, but I'll talk about it right now, and that is the fact that basically whenever a set of girls is supposed to arrive and they don't arrive, that means that they're dead. At least that's what they say. Even if the girls have been freed by Tandy and Tyrone, you remember the girls that we freed, it still does not matter because of the fact that they still did not arrive, so they get told that they were dead. So that is also how they keep the girls locked up. So Tyrone goes over to the Shane to see if he knows anything, and he starts immediately act kind of suspicious, and then he also uses the record player in order to make it so that Tyrone thinks that Tandy doesn't care about him anymore. And then after that, because of the fact that in the vision of Tyrone he saw the auntie, he goes over to her in order to learn about the symbol that he has been seeing the entire time. And while he is off doing that stuff, Mayhem goes around the record room, and she starts to put in records that make Tyrone know that Tandy actually does care about him. So he goes off once again in order to search for her. However, he doesn't necessarily have a clue. So then Mayhem puts in records based off of ambulance noises, which causes a bunch of ambulances to appear, at least for him to see a bunch of ambulances. And it's like, oh, so she was taken by ambulances. He immediately gets that idea, which, good job. That is why Mayhem was not taken when we escaped the dark dimension, because that would have been so horrible if Mayhem was actually taken. And then afterwards, Mayhem starts destroying a bunch of these these records, which I thought was just funny. Just going around, just throwing them on the ground. Very fun. So Tandy plans to escape. She has a plan. She wants to execute it. She goes to execute it, but she gets caught because the other girl snitched on her. And that is when Tandy tells the other girl about the girls that were supposedly dead, but actually were saved. And this caused the girl to kind of get a little bit of a change of heart. However, Tandy also goes in full despair mode, sadly enough. And she gets dressed up for a customer to do what he wants with her. So then the Shane is at the aunt's place, and she kind of notices something bad about him. So the Shane goes into the dark dimension, but it turns out that Auntie can also be there, and he also notices that the whole record shop has been destroyed, kind of. He's like, what the hell happened here? So then he tells the Auntie, pick your favorite memory, and also the Auntie sees Mayhem and tells her not to come in, and then kind of like in Superman and Man of Steel. And then she pulls out a thing, she puts it on the record player, and she listens to it while the Shane picks a record with her heart and then stops it to kill her. So Auntie dies, R.I.P. the gal. So the girl has a little bit of an opportunity in order to get some information, and that is the fact that while she's walking around, she sees a phone. So she steals the phone, looks up the stuff. Turns out that Tandy was speaking the truth, and because of the fact that the girl now has gotten hope, that gives Tandy her dagger back right before she is about to be used, as you could say. And then she goes around the hotel attacking the people that are, you know, using the girls. And Tyrone at this point also arrives at the hotel, and Tyrone and Tandy, they meet up eventually after going through I don't know how many walls. However, Tyrone then gets trapped by his own power, and Tandy doesn't understand what is happening, and neither does Tyrone. So the Shane, together with Leah, steal a car in order to escape the police, because they are now here to investigate the crime scene. And yes, the women are not necessarily called victims by the male police, and it's like, well, they are though. They are victims. I mean, it's not like they really wanted to do this. They were forced to do this by the Shane and Leah. They forced them. Also, somehow Tandy got Tyrone home. Do not ask me how. He was at the hotel on the floor being consumed by his own thing. How do you pick that up up and bring it home. Please, somebody tell me how you do that, because I do not get how you actually bring him home at that point. But she did, and she calls Evita for help because she's into all that voodoo stuff. And as the Evita is grabbing stuff, she does not notice that her auntie is dead. And as she's trying to figure out what's wrong, Tandy talks to her about, also, by the way, O'Reilly is here as well. Anyway, Tandy talks to her about Papa, and it's like, oh, hey, him. Yeah, I know about him. So it's good that Evita knows about Papa. That saves us some time. However, the thing is that Tyrone is trapped between the dark dimension and the real world, I guess. And Tandy and O'Reilly need to go in there in order to save Tyrone. And Tandy gets a free candy bar in order to give to Papa because of the fact that that is the price to pay. So they're standing on the balcony and they jump into Tyrone. It's like, did you really have to do that? I mean, couldn't you have just walked down? Like, why did you have to jump from high? Whatever. Anyway, they go back in and it seems like Papa isn't necessarily angry at Tandy for breaking the rules last time. However, this time she has a candy bar as a fee, so she is able to go to the arcade to find Tyrone. Problem is, she and O'Reilly get separated because of this, because O'Reilly actually gets sent to the record shop. So Tandy meets a new character in there called Baron, and he is like, look, okay, you can play by my game. No, look, I'm not gonna give up Tyrone unless you play the game, and that is if you can convince him to leave, he'll leave, but if he hesitates, he's mine. So you see Tyrone over there playing an arcade, and I love that about this episode because of the fact that it's absolutely awesome. Because Tandy walks up while Tyrone is playing the arcade, and he's like, come on and join in with me. So Tandy joins in, and then we get Cloak and Dagger, the arcade. But then afterwards, we also get Cloak and Dagger, the arcade, but also not the arcade because we see them also fight some people. It's not a lot of fighting, it's usually just the last push, but it's like a combination of arcade and real world, which I actually think is actually really cool. Meanwhile, Tyrone's mom goes over to Francis in order to ask him for help because of the fact that he is protected by the church. So if Tyrone's mom delivers the file that she has to the police, there are going to be questions that she is officially forced to answer them. The priest has immunity from that. However, Francis then is like, yeah, but I'm not really a priest anymore. That's not really me anymore. So there's a bit of an argument about that. Meanwhile, Deshane is still suffering from headaches, and he uses Leah's pain in order to heal his headaches away. And he sees the door and he tries to open it, but he cannot open it. So that's a bit of a shame, but a good thing as well because we don't want him to open it. Also, O'Reilly sees Deshane right there. However, Mayhem then stops her from speaking or going in because no, we can't do that. So then as all of this is happening, Auntie's ghost appears next to Evita and basically tells Evita, you are now the new voodoo woman or whatever. So we eventually get to the final level in the arcade game. One little problem though, it's the motel level. And Tandy is absolutely terrified of the motel level, obviously, because that is where she lost all her hope. However, Tyrone kind of gets her to push through it. So they get to the final boss, who of course is Deshane. And at that point, Tandy kind of leaves the game because she cannot do that. Meanwhile, O'Reilly and Mayhem are talking. They have a nice little time, and then they finally accept each other. At least O'Reilly accepts Mayhem, and Mayhem is like, I'm not gonna be put in a closet only for you to pull me out when you need me, okay? And it's like, no, that's not what's going to happen. We're gonna live together in one body. And they do. They fuse together, which is nice for the two of them. So then Tandy's like, please, Tyrone, just come with me to the real world, please. And he's like, well, but we can die there. And it's like, so he's afraid. That's why. Like in a video game, you die, but there's always that restart from the last checkpoint. No matter how you look at it, you don't actually die because each time you lose, you can restart from the last checkpoint or you can restart the game. And then Tandy's like, yeah, okay, but we're together, okay? Let's fight it together. And then Tyrone is also like, he doesn't want to lose her. And then she's like, I don't want to lose you. So in a way, kind of confessing stuff to each other. However, then the real question comes, do you want to leave? And Tyrone hesitates, which is like, oopsie, he's mine now. However, at this point, a flower appears and it's like, okay, so what happens? And then there's talk of marriage, and I looked it up actually, and it kind of looks like Evita married the Baron or something like that. I don't get it. However, it did cause the gang to escape, so that is good. And also, O'Reilly and Mayhem are now one person. Meanwhile, Tyrone's mom confesses to the priest that she killed Connors because he cannot deliver the thing without actually hearing a confession. So she confesses, and now he can deliver the thing. She drops it at his door in a sense, and then leaves. Meanwhile, Deshane leaves Leah at the side of the road. Either she's dead or not is an unknown to me. I have no idea whether she's actually dead or alive, but it's unknown for now, okay? And he also also figures out what the symbol means. And what the symbol means is the fact that it's actually a music thing. So he figures out the music notes that he needs, and I guess that is how he's going to open up the door, which in a way kind of makes it seem like the next episode is the finale, but we have 2 more episodes to go. Also, Tandy comes home and finds out that her mom has relapsed and is missing right now, and Tyrone appears behind her and then hugs her in order to calm her down. So we are not close to being done yet, because I guess the next detour that we have is the fact that we have to find Tandy's mom before we can stop Deshane, or maybe Deshane took her mom and we can finish it up. Anyway, 2 more episodes to go. Very excited to get into those 2. So just like with the Netflix shows, we gotta have that one episode that details the backstory of the baddie, and this is that episode. So 96 months ago, Deshaun was a musician, and he wanted to do one thing that the musician world should not really do, and that is hit the highest note, the best note, the blue note, I think is actually what it's called. So he goes into the song and he ends it with a blue note, and that causes him to have permanent migraines for the rest of his life. So that 6 months later, he's like, you know what, I can't play music anymore. It's time to end it. It's time to end me. And he's ready. However, then the Sun explosion happened, which caused him to also have powers. Thank God there's not a 3rd season of this show, because I can't help another villain being able to be powerful thanks to the Roxxon stuff. I don't know. It would be formulaic, but I'm actually joking about it. I kind of wish there was a 3rd season. Hey, MCU, bring back these characters. So then in the hospital is where Deshane met Leah, and accidentally she was his first victim, and then after that he manipulated her through music in order to be able to be on his side. And then 85 months ago he started his plan. He started the building for abuse victims, I guess, and also more victims, I guess, because these abuse victims are not safe in this location. Oh, no. Meanwhile, during present day, apparently Deshane has taken Tandy's mom, just as I thought, and then Tyrone and Tandy now have to find Deshane. So Tandy goes to Mayhem in order to ask her for help, and we learned that all the women who were not actually locked up because of the fact that they had the rest out have disappeared. And also the women that we have locked up all started humming. So that's interesting. However, we go to the location where apparently Leah is, and apparently she is alive. So Mayhem and Tandy convince the guy to allow them to take her. And Tandy is ready to kill Leah. She's like, look, either Leah helps us and she dies, or she doesn't help us and she still dies. Meanwhile, Tyrone follows the kid from before, and he also learns that his mom has killed Connors through peeking through the window while she's burning papers of blood. But he goes over to the kid in order to ask him for help. Meanwhile, the kid is reading about this hero somewhere. Not very known. Maybe deserves a show of his own. Don't know if you guys have ever heard of him. However, that article is actually written by Karen Page. But like I said, it's about a nobody. It's a guy called Carl Lucas. Don't know if you've ever heard of him. He goes by Luke Cage now. Doesn't really seem familiar. But yeah, anyway, we get a picture of Mike Coulter's Luke Cage in this episode. You cannot tell me this is not connected to the Netflix stuff, because that little tie-in from the Netflix stuff to here with all of the stuff that is in this series, with the reference to Misty Knight, and now a picture of Mike Coulter as Luke Cage, and also written by Karen Page. That to me is enough confirmation that this is connected to Luke Cage as well, which actually will inspire something in this episode. Kind of. At least that's the way I see it. But anyway, they both bond over their liking of Luke Cage. Understandable. He's a very charismatic guy. And after that, he wants the kid to set up a meeting between the baddies, I guess. He wants to talk to the baddies in order to, well, let's not spoil it. Meanwhile, Tandy uses her powers in order to find something inside of Leah, but she can't get in because it's full of darkness. So we need Tyrone. So Tandy calls Tyrone, and Tyrone appears in order to help, and he opens up the door, and we get to see some more inside of Leah's memories, and that's where we see the whole manipulation through music, what Deshane does to her. And then we open up another door, and it turns out that maybe the way to bring Leah back to normal might be through music. The problem is Deshane now knows that they're here, so he basically taunts them a little bit. And we learn that he wants basically to put New Orleans in despair in order to be able to become a god. And when he said that, Tyrone was like, you didn't mention this guy's insane. And I was like, that's actually really funny. But now that we're done with this, Tyrone heads off to the bad guy meeting, and Tandy fights Mayhem because Tandy can't kill Leah, and Mayhem wants to kill Leah. Leah. So Tyrone basically tells the bad guys to stop selling drugs to people who want to traffic other people or anything in that sort of relation, okay? If you want to sell it to Joe on the street, okay, fine. But not for the trafficking of innocent people, because technically Joe on the street there, he makes his choice. He lies in that bed. But Michaela over there did not agree to have so much heroin shoved into her, where she basically is dead in order to cover up the crimes of other people have done. And initially they're like, no. And also this is what I meant about Luke Cage, where I feel like this is kind of Luke Cage inspired, because this is also what Luke Cage did at the end of season 2 of his show. I kind of wish we got a season 3. Would love to see more of him. But that's not all that Tyrone wants, because he also wants the location of the Shane, and he gets the location. So Tandy and Tyrone head over to the location. The problem is, it is the new building. Apparently they relocated, so we need to go to the original location. So Tyrone and Tandy go over there, and they hear some music. They go inside. They see a bunch of women, I guess the kidnapped women that disappeared out of nowhere. And also Tandy's mom is there as well, and Deshaun is playing all of the sounds that he needs for the song, because he needs to hit that special note again. And Tyrone is like, Tandy, throw your knife at me, I'll kill him with it. So she does that, and he does it too. However, it was too late, because he hit it, which means that everyone has now disappeared, and the Shane opens up the door inside of the dark dimension, and trouble is arising. So let's see how they fix this. Also, very nice that this episode ends with the number of the suicide prevention hotline at the end of the episode. I think that is actually a really good thing that they did that. Alright, here we are, boys, the finale. But before we get started, I would like to say that I actually did talk to my neighbor in between the last episode and this one, and it seems like we have talked it out. I told him not to use the soundbar anymore. Hopefully he listens. So for now, I will remove the prick from him, because he is actually a great guy. But let's get into the finale, shall we? So people are being teleported to Deshaun from all over the city, so that he has an audience in his god play, I guess. Mayhem also goes to Mina in order to, I guess, get herself checked in. However, she then disappears too. So yeah, now no one can check out Mayhem. I mean, I'll check her out, but that's not really what she needs now, is it? So then Tandy is like, we need Avita's help in order to be able to help us. So Navita nails Tyrone, not like that, to the floor. Exactly like that. Well, at least his cloak. And then he takes it off in order to open a door, so that we can go to the one place where only the two of them can go, because that is exactly where he is. Our Shane boy. So we get inside. Turns out a bit of a rampage has gone through here, because the viewfinder is destroyed, so it will be a lot more difficult to find him. However, Tyrone then makes one of those Vive, and that allows us to access the record store, which is apparently now empty after we go through the whole mall. I would have liked to see Tyrone's reaction to all of the cloaks hanging there, but I guess they skipped that one. But anyway, we eventually reached the record store, which, as I said, was entirely empty. However, the door is now open, so they go through the door. Meanwhile, the only way out of this place is if Avita can keep the light on, as you could say. She lit a candle, but she needs to keep the candle lit, and that's the only way. If that candle goes out, there's no way home. So we need the help from Spider-Man, it seems. However, demons from that place, I don't know what else to really call them, start to appear. So then Mayhem appears out of nowhere, and she's the one who backs up Avita while she keeps the light on, and Mayhem fights off the baddies. So then we see Deshaun, and then, or as he is now known, Despair, which is written very weirdly. I was like, what is that? Is that like, well, how do you pronounce that? But then he was like, I'm causing despair. I'm like, oh, that's supposed to be despair. But then he then throws her light dagger at him, but that doesn't sadly enough work, and then he sends them into their nightmares. For Tandy, that is her dad, and for Tyrone, that is in a way the perfect version of himself. So now they have to fight that. The problem is that is a bit of a battle that they cannot really win, not yet. So then eventually they make it towards each other, and then they start to switch partners. So then we have Tyrone versus Tandy's papa, and Tandy versus the perfect Tyrone. And this seems to be going better until Despair is like, we're not doing that anymore, we're putting you back. So Tandy gets put into the hotel and has to fight her dad. And also, I guess she goes through a little bit of a name change, because instead of a dagger, this time she makes a light sword. So is her name now Sword, or is it still Dagger? And Tyrone actually beats up his perfect version of himself as well. So they eventually are able to snap out of the Despair stuff. And now we have Cloak and Dagger versus Despair, which which initially doesn't necessarily seem to go well, but then they instantly get the upper hand and they actually beat him. When Dagger comes out of the cloak, he creates this big like smoke thing, and then Tandy just pops out with a big sword and stabs him. And there you go, we have won. And now that we have won, we're gonna trap him. Also, the demons, as I'll call them, they try to pretend to be the dead boyfriend of Mayhem. However, Mayhem kind of doesn't really care necessarily all that much, just stabs him anyway. But anyway, now they have beaten Despair, so they trap him. And what Tandy does is like she picks up the biggest despair for Despair, puts it on the thing, plays it, and then scratches it with her dagger, so that in a sense, I guess he would relive that exact same moment over and over again in that sense. And then they go back to the real world, and Tandy goes up to Mayhem and is like, I need to ask you something. I need your help clearing Tyrone. And also, Leah is now in the women's prison, which is very nice to see. Mayhem has hung up Connor's body with the word guilty on it. Tyrone watches because he is a creep, I guess, but he watches his family, watches Avita from afar. Tandy is packing because she needs to spread her wings, as you could say. So Tandy gets on the bus, and then for the post-credit scene, Tyrone joins her, and Tandy talks about the fact that there is apparently a girl's body has been washed up on the beach, and maybe they should check that out. That being Runaways, by the way. This is the clearest of tie-ins to Runaways, but all of this took place before Runaways even started. But yeah, they're gonna be in Runaways, baby, and they head off to a better tomorrow. And I will say this season was absolutely great. I thought it was really good, just like the first one. I don't necessarily have too many complaints. Now, this one is also weirdly structured in a way that it's kind of like the same length as the episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. has like 40-minute episodes or 45-minute episodes. Meanwhile, Netflix stuff has 50 to an hour-minute episodes. So there is a difference there, but I love how they were able to structure this season to be 10 episodes, where it feels like it works, instead of like the Netflix stuff where they don't have enough stuff, so they extend it and make it feel a bit boring sometimes. Not all the Netflix shows would like to say that, but I love how they structured this season. I thought this season was great. Now, with the whole which is better, season 1 or season 2 thing, I like them both. I will say that I like them both. However, what I will give the biggest compliment to this season about is the fact that it actually makes me care about human trafficking and stuff like that. Not that I didn't care before, but thanks to Tandy's power, you actually get to feel the aftermath in a way of what, rape or human trafficking does to women. And I love the way that they handled that. Because Tandy goes in and there's just no hope. Yes, it's because of Despair took all that stuff. But even then, the situation itself can make women lose hope and do some, not good stuff to themselves. And I love the way that the season illustrated that, but also the fact that not all men are bad. It's just, we need to stop the bad men. Just like how not all the cops are bad, but we just need to stop the bad cops. It's just difficult to figure out which one of those there are. And I love that about this season as well. This was back when Marvel had almost all of it, because they still made the Eyes, Iron Fist season 1, and Inhumans. They still made that. I will never forgive them for that in that sense. But overall, this is when they had it, and then the MCU ruined everything when they took over the shows. And you know what score I gave it because of the review that I did. But overall, like I said, I love this season, and I would recommend you to watch it if you can watch it. The only thing that I hate about these type of seasons is the fact that it never gets released on DVD and Blu-ray, because that is literally the killer of media, the lack of releasing it like that. Because I can't watch, like, if they take off like Daredevil Born Again or Agatha All Along from Disney Plus, I'll never be able to watch that show ever again. It might as well not be canon to the MCU at that point anyway. And that is the annoying part about the whole streaming only thing. I get why streaming services do it. It's because of the fact that at that point you pay, but I feel like there should be a rule that if you remove something from your streaming service, you have to at that point release it on DVD and Blu-ray, so that at least people can still watch it if they want to. And technically you could still make money off that, because of the fact that this season I cannot watch anymore, and I had to go back to the old nefarious ways, as you could say, which I'm not gonna say out loud because of the fact that I don't want to get into trouble and they don't have anything on me. Technically, some people even call using a VPN as nefarious, because you're using a VPN to watch shows that you're not allowed to see in your country in that sense. So it could be be anything. I'm just saying nefarious because I think it actually is a fun word to say. But overall, let me know what you guys thought in the comment section down below about this season. Fully spoilers, as you know. And with that being said, thank you all so very much for watching, and I do hope you guys have enjoyed it. If you did, please like button, subscribe if you're new, if done so already, turn on notifications. Don't forget, check out the Let's Play channel, link in the description and at the end of the video. And I'll see you guys next time in the MCU, at least. I really want to get into Runaways as well, but we have to do a little movie in between called Thor Ragnarok. So that is what we will be doing next. Does it still hold up even after the release of The Love and Thunder? I guess I'll find out next time when we return to the MCU. Bye!